Okay. Hello. Hello, and welcome to today's lesson about standing out to employers as yourself in English. This is going to be the first of a 5-lesson career series on Pearson English with me, Luke Priddy. So, before we really get started, we are going to be waiting for people to join, okay? So, we'll get into everything. As you join, you're welcome to say hello, say where you're watching from. If we're going to be talking about career stuff, right? We're going to be talking about how to handle a job interview in English throughout this series, but also, of course, today. So, put in where you're watching from and talk about your career goals. Talk about what you struggle with. Talk about your career, right? I want to know what you're working on. I want to know what you want to achieve, okay? That will be great. Now, I see some people joining already. Hello. We have some people joining from LinkedIn. We have some people joining from Facebook. That is fantastic. And YouTube. Hello. Good to have you all. Now, I will be over here. You'll see me going through some slides today. I might be popping back and forth. But wow, it's great to see so many people joining already. As I said right at the start, because I don't think anyone had joined right at the start, so nobody heard me say that probably. We're going to be talking today about how to stand out to employers as yourself in English, okay? So, we're going to be, getting into things like confidence. We're going to be getting into resumes and CVs. I'm going to be talking about the lesson objectives in just a moment as we give people just another minute to join. As I said, my name is Luke Priddy, and we're going to be doing this 5-lesson series on careers with Pearson English. So, very excited to have everybody here. I see Bobin and Olivia and Luciana. I see Abby. I see Tahara. I see Luis or Luis. Sorry if I'm saying that wrong. Well, people from Egypt. This is fantastic. Great. Very exciting to have everybody here. Okay. So I think Catherine is here. Wow. Fantastic. I think what we can do is just get started. Now, we will have challenges throughout, right? So it's not going to just be me talking and talking and talking. I'll be doing a little bit of that, of course, but I'll be asking you questions. So I want you to put those in the chat, right, as I ask them. There'll be little English challenges, okay? And then at the end of our lesson today, we're going to do a Q&A. So we'll dedicate that time specifically to maybe you have questions about resumes. Maybe you have questions, or CVs rather. Resumes or CVs. We'll talk about, by the way, the difference between those. My brain is programmed to say resume sometimes because I'm an American. We'll talk about that a little bit. But we'll get to your questions at the end as well. Okay? Okay. Hey, from India, Aman is here, Mohammed and Harvinder. Good to have you. So let's get into our lesson, how to stand out to employers as yourself in English. Now, what does that mean? Well, that means you, the authentic you, and how that can be actually a huge advantage in the job interview process. By the way, if you see me sometimes take a sip of a drink, I'm actually having chamomile tea. I've already had my coffee. Now I need the tea. So I sort of, it's my come down from coffee. I have a little tea to sort of soothe my throat. Okay, so we're going to go through the objectives first, the lesson objectives first, right? Then we will get into some of the problems. We'll talk about some strategies for standing out. Then we're going to do an English focus, okay? So stay tuned for that. That's all coming up. So first, we need to talk about how you can, use your unique personality to stand out among the crowd. You want to stand out because you want the employer to choose you and not someone else, right? So you don't want to blend in. We'll talk about how to do that. We'll talk about writing a CV or resume and the difference between those a little bit, and a cover letter, which is very, very important. How to do that in English, of course. You're going to learn a bunch of useful words and phrases for interviews in this lesson and also the next 4 lessons. We're going to have an English focus throughout, okay? And we'll talk about how you can build confidence in yourself as a candidate. Now, you might think, okay, well, is that important? Does that matter? Of course it does. It is a huge factor. People can feel confidence. It's kind of a superpower, especially when it comes to job interviews. So we'll be talking about that too. And I see we have even more people joining from LinkedIn, from Facebook, from YouTube. I see AWG. I'm not sure how to say that name, but that's an interesting spelling. I like that a lot. Hisham Ali, hello, welcome. And Kitty, that's a cool name. Noshin from Pakistan. And from YouTube, awesome. Oh, great to see everybody joining. I'm just going to say this one more time right now, okay? Because I know people are joining, so some people are not hearing it. From Greece, hello. Put your questions in. We're going to have English challenges throughout, so you'll have a chance to practice what you're learning in today's lesson. But also, we're going to have a Q&A at the end, and I'm going to be answering your questions, whether those are English questions, whether those are questions related to the interview process, right? Okay, and again, my name is Luke, and today's lesson is about how to stand out as yourself in a job interview in English. And we're here today with Pearson on different platforms, which is exciting, LinkedIn and Facebook and YouTube. Very cool. Okay, so your ability to be confident and to be real is a critical thing, very important. We're going to be really spending our time on that, a lot of that today, because it's so important. And how do you make that come across in English, right? There's feeling confident and being authentic. And then the other part of that is doing that well in English. So these are really 2 big problems, right? Lots of other candidates, 100 other people applying for this job that I want. Well, how do I separate myself? How do I make myself stand out in a good way when there's 100 other people, right? And then once I feel like I can do that, how do I express that in English? Okay, so these are really are the main problems, right? So we're first going to get into some strategies for standing out. How can you stand out in a good way to an employer, right? And so we're going to go through a few tips, then we'll get to the English part, I promise. And great, more people joining. And as I see a post from Pearson, I didn't write that, who's controlling the chat. Don't forget to put your questions in the chat. Yes, absolutely. Put your questions in the chat. But I would say if you've got a really juicy question, maybe grab that one, put it in the chat, but then copy it and maybe be ready to put it in later because the chat goes up and up and up. And it would be good to see that maybe again at the end so we can get to it, okay? So some strategies for standing out. This is more general stuff before we get into the English. If you try to fit in with expectations and you think to yourself, what does the employer or interviewer expect me to be like? That generally is not the right way to think about it, because then you're fitting yourself into a mold, and a lot of other candidates are doing that too. So when people try to be more like each other, they become less distinct. And that can be good for life sometimes, but in an interview, you want to be distinct, right? So you want to try to instead take full advantage of your unique personality, your characteristics, and use those things, highlight those things in the process. It's a different way of thinking, right? But it's very important. And the most successful candidates know how to do this really well. Also, being really authentic. If you're very real, you just say, I'm going to be myself, right? Like, I'm going to take a sip when I want to take a sip. I'm going to be me. If you make a commitment to that, it sounds kind of maybe silly and emotional, but it's real. It really matters because then you can make relationships with people during the interview. People can feel it. If you're trying to be yourself and real and not trying to be someone else, that's going to make a big difference. You might make a friend, you might get to know people, right? It can be, I think, a great advantage. Also, think about asking questions. And this is something that I've experienced a lot. This is just a little bit of background information, but I've interviewed and hired a lot of people. Hundreds of people, a lot of people. And one of the things that really sticks out to an employer or an interviewer is, oh, you're curious about this, right? You're asking questions to show that you've researched, to show that you want to understand more, to show that you're proactive, right? That really impresses employers. If you just sit there and wait for all the questions, it might not show that you're proactive and really engaging in the process. So we're going to be focusing on this in another lesson. I would strongly recommend that you have questions ready to go on the days of your interview, even if it's just the first one, right? The other is to think about language. You may think, okay, my English, it's my second language. That's a weakness for me. And we're here to learn English, right? We're going to be talking, that's what's coming up next. I'm going to be teaching you some English words and phrases. But one thing to keep in mind is that you wouldn't be in the interview if it were a, let's call it a deal breaker, right? So you're there. Now, can you actually use the fact that you speak not just one language, you speak your native language and English, maybe a little bit of another. Can you turn that into, instead of thinking of that as a disadvantage, thinking of it as an advantage? I'm bilingual. I'm a polyglot. I speak multiple languages. Not perfectly, but I can communicate really well. And also, I'm working on my English. That shows that you are, always improving yourself. So that can be used as an advantage in the process rather than a disadvantage, okay? All right. So if you have any questions about that, let me know. And again, it's great to see more people joining. Fantastic. Hello, Pamela is here. And Tayyaba from Pakistan, NHU. New? I'm not sure how to pronounce that one. Is there, a publication? Maybe we can get to that one a little later. Hello from Mexico. Carla's here. Hello. Fantastic to have you. Okay. So, right after this English part, I'm going to give you a challenge, and I hope you're ready to take that on. Okay? All right. So what about the English part of this, right? We talked about how we can stand out, how we can differentiate ourselves, and we're going to actually use that as one of our words. So if you don't know that, don't worry. Let's just do a little bit of a language focus here, okay? A competitive advantage. This is when you're among other people, right? What's the one thing or maybe the two things that you have, that only you have, or can do, that only you can do, that is unique. So is that your ability to use humor when you're communicating to make people feel kind of relaxed around you, and then they like working with you more, and so you can get more done? Maybe. Maybe your competitive advantage is that you're so efficient in the way that you work that the work you do is maybe done in half the time. Okay, that's your competitive advantage, right? Now, what's the difference between that and your qualifications or being qualified? So if you say, I am qualified, this is a general word, which means the things that allow you to be able to do this, right? Now, that could include specific things like a certification, a degree. It could include those things, of course. But more broadly, it can include your experience. It can include your knowledge. It can include all kinds of things that allow you or would allow you to do this well, right? That is what you could call your qualifications, right? And if you can list those out and you can sort of memorize them or at least learn them for yourself, you should be able to talk about them in an interview. And again, sometimes those are achievements and degrees and certifications, but it also can include more than that. And broadly, if you can do this job, you would do it well. You would say, I am qualified or I am well qualified. Okay? Now, you can also say that you're differentiating yourself. I mentioned this word before. What does it mean to differentiate yourself? To differentiate means to say, this is my thing that makes me different. We want to do that in the job interview because you want to stand out to employers as yourself in English. It's the title of today's lesson, right? So differentiating is good usually, and you want to focus on what you can do, maybe that either others can't, or what you're really good at, your unique skills. You could say differentiating yourself, you use your competitive advantage and your qualifications to differentiate yourself in the interview. And that's a tough word to say, so I'll just say it more slowly to get the pronunciation. That might be a tough one. Differentiate. 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 Okay? Two other things very quickly before we get into the challenge that I have for you. Okay? Culture fit or cultural fit. This is not how good you are or your skills only. This is, are you the type of person that fits with this company, right? Amazon is famous for their extremely intense demands, right? People are expected to work, this is just what I've heard. I'm not an Amazon employee. People are expected to work 60 hours a week. So they have a culture of intense work and high expectations. Well, is that the kind of person you are? Do you like that pace? If so, you may be a cultural fit, okay? Cultural fit. This is more than the skills. This is, are you the kind of person who would be good here? And you want to highlight that in the interview because they're not just hiring you as a person with skills, they're hiring you as a potential coworker. If you're being interviewed, they're looking at you as a, oh, I could work with this person. So I need to make sure I like them. I want to like them, and I want to make sure that they would fit in well with how we do things here. So this is where you get into your research to know what the culture is before the interview, before the cover letter even, to let them know that, yes, I am a good cultural fit, right? And then follow up is something that you might do after an interview to say, it was nice speaking with you on Thursday. I just wanted to follow up. So a follow-up is a general thing that we do for meetings, for events, for all kinds of things, including interviews, to, after something has happened, to reconnect, to kind of put our hand up and say, hey, remember that thing we did. And this can be a big thing. I got a job once just by following up. She said, the person on the phone, I called and say, hey, I'm just following up. I didn't say, hey, hello, I'm just following up on the job application I submitted. I think I was like 21 years old or something. But she said, oh, you're the only person who actually called me back. You've got the job. It was something like that. I got the job because I followed up, right? So it's important not only to ask questions, but also to follow up, because that shows that you are proactive. Okay? Okay. So now we get into our challenge. I have a challenge for you, the chat. So I want you to think about this, okay? I want you to, in let's say 2 or 3 sentences, I want you to tell me, explain to me what you think your competitive advantage is, or advantages. If you have 1 or 2, that's okay, all right? Maybe you want to mention experience. Maybe you want to talk about skills, right? But also, don't forget to include something that is totally unique to you, okay? Try this out. Think about this. What is your competitive advantage? We talked about the word. And if you want to start this, you can say, my competitive advantage is, or my competitive advantages are, okay? Put that in the chat. I want to see, I will read your answers. And it's okay if I go to the next thing, I'll go back and read some of them, okay? Andre from Brazil. Darkhan, hello. Hello from LinkedIn. So we've got people joining from today, Facebook and LinkedIn and YouTube, which is great, from apparently all over the world. Poland, Pakistan, Turkey, Mexico. Excellent. It's great to have everybody here. Well, this is very exciting. Now we're going to be doing, if you enjoyed this lesson, we're going to be doing 4 more of these, right? We're going to be talking about how to answer interview questions. We're going to be talking about how to prepare for the interview itself, right? This is going to be in this 5-lesson series on Pearson English. And so we've got a lot of stuff coming up, right? So I hope you're ready and excited for that. Abby says, my competitive advantage is my experience in different industries, ability to communicate with people, and my creative skills. So experience in different industries, that would be a good one, because it shows that you maybe have a fairly broader understanding, right? You're able to grab experience from different places, and that might give you insights, right? That's a great one. Abby, well done. You're hired. You're hired. Mariana says, my competitive advantage is that I've relocated to 2 different, and you see me looking down here, okay? I'm looking down at the chat. That's why I'm doing that, okay? I'm not just looking at the wall. My competitive advantage is that I've relocated to 2 different countries in my life and have learned how to adapt and even learned a whole new language at the age of 32. Marianne, that's fantastic. That's a good one for sure. Catherine, my competitive advantage is my creativity and transferable skills. Yeah. I've heard that one called AQ. You know how we have IQ and EQ? There's a new one, and I believe it's called AQ, which is adaptability quotient, right? Can you take skills and apply them in different places? My competitive advantage is that I have the skills to bring my knowledge from outside the workplace and apply them in the workplace. Apply it in the workplace. That's a good one. That's a good one. Yeah. Yeah. And maybe next time we can add these to the screen so that we can all see them. But we'll work on that for the next one, okay? I like to be organized, creative, and flexible, says Stephanie. So Stephanie, there I would just say, just change it a little bit to say instead of that you like that you have that as a competitive advantage, right? Just say, my competitive advantage is that I am organized and creative and flexible. And you don't have to use that phrase, competitive advantage, but it can be a good way to start it, I think. Okay, last one I'm going to read here. Oh, two more quickly, and then we're going to move on because we have to keep on moving. We're going to talk about the CV next, and then we're going to get into the cover letter after that, okay? Two more quickly. Ekaterina? Cool name. Love it. From YouTube says, I never give up and love learning new things. What can I say about that? That's amazing. Because giving up is a big reason people fail, right? That's a great one. My competitive advantages are, 1, I speak 3 languages. Excellent. Lived in 4 different countries and have the ability to communicate with people. I would say for that very last one, instead of have the ability to communicate, develop that a little bit, right? If you say have the ability to communicate, it's a little broad. I would say I'm good at explaining abstract or very complex things in a simple way, or I'm good at connecting empathetically with people to understand how they feel so that I can maybe figure out the best way to work with them. Maybe be a little more specific for that one. Okay. Competitive advantage is experience in the public and private sector and used to live in different parts of our country and learn more about people. Yeah, okay, good one. Empathy is a big one. All right. Guys, it's awesome that you have more of these coming in. This is fantastic. The thing is, I don't want to get behind, right? I want to keep us moving. We have 2 things to talk about still, and I don't want to get, I could be reading these all day. Who knows? It's great that you're sending them in. It's fantastic. Okay, so let's get to the CV. Now, in a generally speaking, CV, resume, these are kind of the same thing. The formatting can be a little different. The way that they're structured is a little different. Generally, a CV is longer and has more detail. A resume might be a little simpler, but they're kind of the same thing, okay? So if I accidentally say resume because I am an American, well, I deeply apologize. They're very similar, okay? So how do we build a really good CV in English? Why does that matter? Does it matter? What's it for? You know, what is it exactly, right? So your CV or your resume, this is your chance not to grab the attention visually of whoever's reading it, hiring manager, recruiter, anyone who's looking at a resume. You don't want to make it stand out because you chose a great font, right? This is your chance to say, I'm good. I'm professional. Here's what I've done. Here's what I can do. This is me professionally, right? And to do that in a simple and clear way, right? So when it comes to your CV or resume, you generally want to use a conservative format. The place to be impressive is not in how wacky and crazy and creative it is necessarily, unless sometimes for a design field or something, perhaps it might be good because then you're showing your design skills, but generally not. Picture a person who's reading resumes all day, 1, 2, 3, just reading through them. Do you think that they're going to really care about that? What they care about is, well, this person has what we need, and there it is on the resume or CV. And the other thing is that it's absolutely critical to have perfect English there. I can speak to this from personal experience because, as I said, I have reviewed probably thousands of resumes and CVs. And if I get one that doesn't have perfect English, I just blink. I just ignore it because what it tells me is they are not serious. They have not put in the time to make the English perfect. Because, and this is a perfect chance for you to connect with a colleague or a friend, if you have someone you know who can help you, right? Maybe your English is not perfect. That's okay. Ask a colleague, hey, do you think you could help me work on my CV? Hey, do you think you could help me structure this sentence? Hey, could you read through this and give me some feedback? Colleagues, friends, people you know. This is a perfect opportunity to connect with others, right? So, and punctuation is a big one, right? Perfect punctuation, periods, commas, exclamations, right? Not that hard to get right, okay? So the basics, I would say. You also generally want to focus on the takeaways. That means when someone reads this, what should they see about you, right? What should they say to themselves about you? Oh, this person seems to be very good at, oh, this person, because of all of their experience, must be really skilled or knowledgeable in this area, in this field, right? So instead of just making a list, you want to focus on what you want them to learn about you when they read through your CV or your resume. So maybe that you're creative, maybe that you're very proactive, maybe that you're focused on getting results, right? It's also important to show rather than tell. And that means you don't just say, I am good at, maybe. You also show that with things that you've done, right? If you achieved a goal in your career, maybe you worked with a marketing team and you were able to get 100,000 leads in a 6-month period. That is an example of showing rather than telling. What is telling? Telling would be, I'm good at getting leads. Showing would be, in my previous job, we were able to get 100,000 leads in 6 months. That's showing. So think about things in that way rather than just what it is, right? Make it a little bit more clear with examples, okay? Now, we're going to get into the personal statement, and this is where we get back to English, okay? So we're going to be getting back to English. I'm just going to be checking the chat for a second, and then we're going to be talking about the personal statement or the profile of your CV and how we can structure that, right? And a few useful English phrases that you can use in your profile, okay? We've got some more competitive advantages. Good. Confidence, skills, Mary from Ukraine, hardworking, thinking out of the box. Love that. That's a good one for sure. And Vanessa, regarding the conservative format, do you believe this is also true for more creative professions? I feel like in the past, that's one thing I mentioned. That's a really good point, Vanessa. Vanessa's asking about, for a creative profession, it helped to have that maybe unique format. And I think that's a good point. I believe I mentioned that a couple of minutes ago. Generally speaking, right, you want to stand out with the content, but in some cases, you're a designer. So there you might show rather than tell your design skills with the design of the CV, right? But you're a designer, so you know how to do that. My point was more that if you're not a designer, it may not be the best idea to try to get super creative with a bunch of fonts and things like that. I've seen that happen, and that, I think, doesn't really help you stand out. Okay. All right. So let's get into the English part, and then I have another challenge for you, friends. So I want to talk about what we could call the profile of the CV. So this part is where you can get a little bit creative with how you express this, right? You want this part, the first statement in the CV, to grab the attention of whoever is reading through it, so that they can see very clearly the kind of person you are, the kind of things you're good at, the kind of things you've done, what you've achieved, right? So let's talk a little bit about that. How can you differentiate yourself with your profile, with this first thing? Okay, so let's hop into that quickly. A few phrases you might use: extensive experience in. So this is an interesting phrase which can suggest that you haven't been doing this for 6 months, right? In this field, you've been doing it for a long time. Extensive, okay? A proven track record of. If you have a proven track record of something, that means that you have something outside of your opinion, right, that shows that. So that would be results. I mentioned the example of getting 100,000 leads for something, right? That's a proven track record. Your track record is your history, what you have accomplished, not just your opinion, right, but what you have accomplished. So we can say extensive expertise in. We can say an extensive background in. By the way, same kind of thing. A proven ability to is similar to a proven track record, but track record is more about the history, and proven ability is more about what you can do, right? This is what I've achieved. That's my proven track record. And then a proven ability is what I'm able to do now. If you were to put a task in front of me right now today, this is what I could do because of my skills, and they're proven skills, meaning I'm not just saying that, I can back that up with examples, okay? Maybe an in-depth knowledge of, so there you want to focus on what you know, right? In-depth, not just superficial. I know a lot of things in this field. And maybe if you want to mention time, you could say nearly a decade, nearly 10 years, over 5 years. It doesn't have to be nearly. You can say nearly, you can say over. You could say almost, right? That doesn't sound quite as good as if I say almost 10 years. It depends, right? You could say about 10 years. That would be okay too. So these are some things you can use when you're writing out this first statement, the profile of your CV. And there's another version of this for a resume. For the sake of time, we're not going to go over both, right? But it's a similar thing at the beginning of a resume. This is going to be kind of an eye-catching statement about you, and it's usually a couple of sentences, okay? So let's look at a basic structure, right? I'm just giving this as an example structure. I'm not saying that you have to. Then I'm going to give you a challenge. So I want you to start thinking about your first sentence. And if you want to start working on that, if you can walk and chew gum at the same time, you can start working on your first sentence, because I'm going to be asking you to put that in the chat in a second, okay? So you might say, experienced, and then say your career focus. What do you do, right? UX designer, for example. With over, then we would say maybe some accomplishment you have of 40 successful projects. That would be part of your track record. Okay, this is, by the way, how to structure the first sentence. You can use this. There are many ways to do it. Then you might have your areas of focus. So what specific things are you good at? Maybe front-end development. Maybe that's graphic design. Maybe that's specific aspects of sales, right? Things like that. And then across you can have, could be time if you want to say, or different industries. Across 10 years, you could say, or across banking, finance, and medicine or health. You could then give the different industries, right? So that's a way to structure it, okay? Just an example of that then. Again, just an example. So you might say something like highly experienced. This highly experienced, this is a very, very useful way to have an adjective, right, with a thing in front of it that makes it a little stronger. Highly experienced UX designer with over 40 successful projects in product design and front-end development across fintech and banking. I'm just taking my exact structure that I just told you, right? And I'm basically just putting it all together. That first sentence has, wow, a lot of power. Very experienced. Okay, what do you do? UX. Okay, got it. 40 successful projects. Ooh, track record. Very nice. Accomplishment. What do you focus on? Oh, product design and front end. Okay, got it. And you've worked in fintech and banking. So it says a lot in one sentence. And then you would go on and say something like, specializing in UX design with a 10-year track record of collaborating with developers, product managers, and key stakeholders in major financial institutions such as Chase and Wells Fargo, strong team player who values deep collaboration, idea sharing, and pushing creative boundaries. So, okay, we don't have time to go over all of that, but that would be a way to sort of continue to use some of these phrases to talk about how much time, how long is my career, who have I worked with, what is the style, what is my culture fit, how do I work, right? What institutions have I worked with, what big companies have I worked with, right? What kind of a team player am I? Am I good at that? Right? What is my competitive advantage, right? So my challenge to you is, can you put this together? Can you give me a simple first sentence? That's all I want. A first sentence. Put those in the chat and we will go through those. For the sake of time, we're going to keep going through our, that next part, we're going to talk a little bit about cover letters very quickly. Then we're going to get to our Q&A, okay? So we're going to get to that in just a second. So put in, I see we have Stephanie here. Oh, Stephanie, you were here earlier. If you want, put in your first sentence. I would like to read through it. Mahmoud, great to have you here from Iran. Awesome. Highly experienced business English trainer with over 20 years experience of successfully enabling business leaders in all industries to feel more confident in their business dealings in the English language. That's a pretty solid one. Marianne, did you just come up with that? That's pretty good. Stephanie says, thank you, Abby, for your answer. How to show on your CV you have no experience in any job before, but you are willing to work in that company. That's a tough one. If you have no experience, you would probably be generally starting at maybe an intern level, internships, and maybe that's an entry-level position. And they might want to see in a CV, they might want to see your education at least. They might want to see any projects you've worked on. When you were in university, for example, what kind of groups were you in? How did you participate? They can still learn things about you even though you don't have work history, right? So it doesn't mean don't make a CV. It just means, okay, maybe you've worked on other things that you can talk about that weren't jobs, right? So that's what I would suggest. Okay. Omar, successful and highly organized engineer with a master's degree in engineering, project management, and a bachelor degree in civil engineering. Have more than 20 years of experience, of which more than 13 years. Okay, this is a long one for the sake of time, but Omar, that's an awesome one. Experiences have varied in supervision and implementation operations for construction and maintenance work. Okay. Mohammed, you said, I am a civil engineer with 6 years of experience. I would try to just develop that one a little bit more to make that first sentence a little more impactful. Maybe have it cover a bit more stuff, a bit more of a focus on different things. Extensive experience in the education sector with over 16 years of in-depth knowledge in delivering pedagogies in the UK and internationally. That's a good one. Some of you guys are preparing these in advance. That was fast. All right, let's keep going. We got to move straight through this. We're going to spend the next couple of minutes talking briefly about cover letters, and then we have our Q&A, which we're going to start in a couple of minutes. Okay? Okay. Oh, I should have put that in the chat earlier. Sorry about that. Imagine this thing on the screen 2 minutes ago. Okay. Maybe I should have kept drinking coffee instead of chamomile. This is my Rad Dad coffee cup. I'm not a Rad Dad, and people have always made fun of me for having this cup that says Rad Dad. Oh, you have a Rad Dad cup, but you're not a dad? But that's going to change. In August, I will be having my first child. So then I will be a Rad Dad. It's about to be true. I've had the cup for 7 years, and it's always been a lie until now. All right. So let's get into the cover letter. What is a cover letter? This is essentially, why don't we think of it as an advertisement for your CV? You want the person who sees it to go, hey, I need to see this person's CV and learn more about them, right? That's what you want. That's your goal of the cover letter. It depends on the situation. Some places require it to be sent in a specific way, so you need to be aware of that. But often a cover letter can just be an email to a hiring manager, to a potential employer, and then you have the cover letter in the body of the email. Now, it could be a separate thing that's an attachment, but these days, more and more often, you either submit it in a specific place, in a field somewhere on their website, or it's just an email, and that's okay too. But these things change over time, okay? Now, in your cover letter, you want to talk about your experience and skills, but it's not a duplicate of your CV. This is more qualitative. You want to say not just what you are good at, but what that means, and connect that to why you would be a good fit, right? So that's qualitative, not quantitative. That is, what does it mean that I'm good at this? Why would that be good for this company? Explain why, for example, you would be a good cultural fit. You're connecting the dots in the cover letter to make them see, oh, this person would be a good person to have in our company. We would like to talk to them more. How do I find their CV? Oh, it's attached. Oh, there it is. Oh, nice. Right. So it's sort of that way to get them interested, right? Now, again, English, very important. Have a friend or a colleague or someone you know look at it. That's it. Have them give you some feedback. It has to be perfect. Spelling, punctuation, grammar. Again, it's not that hard to have a couple of perfect cover letters to have ready to go, and you can change them depending on the job. But it is very important because employers are very sensitive to that, right? They see that and they say, oh, you're not serious because you didn't capitalize your I's, right? It's a small thing, but it can make a very big difference, right? And the other thing is to think about your experience, or rather your non-nativeness as an English speaker as an advantage, right? We've been talking about this throughout, but why should it be a disadvantage for you to be an English learner, to not have perfect English? Yes, you're always working on your English, you're always trying to improve, but does that mean it's a disadvantage? Doesn't that show that you're always improving yourself, you're always willing to learn, that maybe your language offers a new perspective? So think about ways to use not only that as an advantage, but other things that you previously thought maybe were not my good point. Maybe that's part of your uniqueness. Maybe that's part of what makes you special, and you can use that as your advantage in this process and communicate that to employers, to hiring managers, to recruiters as a way to connect with them and make them see you as a unique candidate, right? To stand out to potential employers in English as yourself, okay? So very quickly now, we're going to get to the Q&A in a second, so get those ready. And if you have other first sentences, I will be looking through those too. But let's just go through a few beginnings. These are called, by the way, salutations. And there are a few that are pretty common if you don't know who the email is to exactly. So you might just say, to whom it may concern. You capitalize every one of those. To whom it may concern, comma. No space in front of the comma. It's one of the most common mistakes I see. Spaces in front of commas. No. No. You might say, dear hiring team. Okay, so you don't know which person in the hiring team will see it, so you address the entire team. You might say, dear, and then have the company name, hiring manager. If you know their name, you might use that, but it's okay to say, dear Amazon hiring manager. Then, though, if you get a response and at the end of their response is a name, you don't have to keep saying, dear hiring manager. You can then say just hi and then the name. It's okay to say hi. It's okay to say hello. Once you have a person and you're interacting with them, you can say hi, you can say hello, and their first name. So you don't have to be usually so formal, right, that you're always using this. These other ones, hiring manager, hiring team, these are when you just don't know who exactly you are going to be interacting with, right? Okay, so that's what we have to talk about today. We've talked about a lot of things. We've talked about a few tips for standing out, right? How you can strategies for standing out in an interview, in the whole process. We went through some key language, competitive advantage, qualifications, differentiate, cultural fit, follow up, right? We went through some examples of your competitive advantages. We talked about how to build a CV and some useful phrases like extensive expertise, right? Like a background or an extensive background. We looked at a sample profile and an example of a sample profile from a CV and some of yours. And if you have any more, we'll take a look at those. And we talked a little bit about cover letters. We're going to be doing a lot more stuff coming up in future lessons. So we have 4 more lessons coming up, right? And we're going to be getting into the interview process. I think the next lessons, each one, I think, gets better and better. We are going to talk about how to prepare for questions mentally, how to be ready to be confident, right? To be yourself in English as you get ready for questions. We're going to be talking about specifically the most common questions you may get, how to answer those, self-introductions, some of the more advanced questions, answering hypotheticals and doing scenarios, and all kinds of stuff. We have a lot of things coming up, right? So I hope you're ready for that. For today, I want you to just take away a few things, okay? there's a kind of Venn diagram. You know the Venn diagram? The only person who has all of the things that you have is you. So you're totally unique in that way, right? Remember that and use it to your advantage. By the way, put your questions in the chat now. We're going to be doing a quick Q&A, so put those questions in the chat starting now. If you have questions about the process, anything we talked about today, if you have questions about a specific example, let me know. Pop those in now, okay? So we're going to take those things and turn them into advantages, because that's what makes you unique. That's what is going to make you stand out in English, right? Be yourself in English. That's what we say. You don't have to fit the mold, right? It's okay to stand out and find ways of highlighting yourself, right? You want to make sure that your cover letter and your CV are good, professional. Get help from colleagues, native English speakers, friends. They have to be good. Put real work into making those really good. That's going to get you a higher chance of getting more interviews, right? And it's okay if English is not perfect in general. Perfect for your cover letter and resume, but in general, right? It doesn't have to be a thing that gets in the way. You show that you are always improving by learning English. That's one of the strong points that you have, right? So don't let that kill your confidence. Don't let that get in the way of being confident in an interview. You can be confident. As you're improving your English, you can be confident, right? You can be yourself in English and really stand out to employers no matter what, right? It's not about that absolutely perfect English. It's about being confident. It's about, knowing some of the right words and phrases. And it's about, I think, being very, very authentic. Okay? So let's see. I think we're going to get to a few questions if we have a bit of time. Thank you all so much for joining. Is there an up-to-date publication from Pearson on this topic? I believe so, but I'm gonna throw that to the team. Let me get back to you on that one in a second. Namaste from Nepal. Hello, Luxman. You joined late. We're getting close to the end. From Argentina. Hello, Maria. Hello. Did I miss any of the first sentences for the profile of the CV? I wonder. Okay. I see I might have missed a question earlier. I'm just getting this from the team. How do you think we should answer the excuse me? How do you think we should answer the typical question about your weaknesses? I always find that one to be tricky. Ooh, that's a good one. Just taking a quick sip. Chamomile, nice. A quick sip. Right. So, first of all, we're going to get into that specific question in depth, right, in the third lesson. But I can give you a quick answer to this in general, right? Your weaknesses, you don't have to say in your weaknesses, I'm bad at, right? And just dwell on how bad you are at something. Maybe not the best idea, right? But you may also not want to say one of those things that is actually it's a strength, but you say it as a weakness, right? I'm too organized. Or something like that, you know. You may have heard that as advice. I don't think that's great advice because it's so easy to see what that is. Instead, I would recommend that you choose something that is really a weakness for you, but something that you have already made progress on and that you're continuing to improve. I'll give you an example. English. Okay, so English is not my first language, and that means sometimes I misunderstand things, cultural differences. Sometimes people make references or they speak too quickly. But I'm always trying to improve this. I just took a lesson today. I watched a lesson today about how to prepare for job interviews. I've taken courses. I watch a lot of videos, and I'm always practicing. Oh, good. So this is, yes, it is a weakness, but it is showing that you are proactively working on it and have made progress on it. So you want to choose things that are probably not deal breakers, but things that are genuinely weaknesses, but you've already taken 3 or 4 out of the 10 steps you would need to have that not be a weakness anymore. And that shows a lot, right? It shows that you're actively doing things to improve yourself, right? To gain new skills, to be a better person, to be a better potential employee, right? So that would be my recommendation for that. Okay. All right. How would you introduce and teach adult students to write a CV? So I think I just did that. I mean, I'm assuming you guys are not all children. If you are, well, hello. Why aren't you in school? I mean, yes, I see your point in that we didn't go in depth to breaking down every step of building the CV. We talked about a few tips for doing it well, and then we went through the profile. We talked about a profile example and a few phrases, but yeah, there is a process. I would say just in general, there's nothing wrong with finding a template structure. So you have a structure. In general, you want to think about showing rather than just telling. Choose experience that is results focused rather than just saying what you did, right? Emphasize the results rather than just what you did, right? If it's possible to have a number there, we achieved this specific number, 60,000 or whatever it is, do that. So always just think about it throughout as I want to show rather than tell, because I want to paint this picture of myself as capable, as skilled, as experienced, and just this list of things that I can do, maybe a little less impactful for a recruiter. What is the difference between, says Laxman, what's the difference between a professional CV and an academic CV? So I'm not as experienced with the academic CV, right? I've seen a few. I think structurally they're pretty similar, but just the way the type of stuff that you would include would probably be much different if it's going to be focused on, your academic career, right? If you're doing research and things like that, I would say I'm probably not the best person to answer the details on that. But I believe the structure and the format, from what I've seen, are pretty much the same. Daniela says, Daniela says, thank you, really helpful. Glad to hear it. We're going to be wrapping things up in just a minute, everyone, so I'm just going to be reading any final questions you may have. Marianne, Abby says, yes, no publication at the moment, but 4 more live sessions to come. Thank you for answering that, Abby. Appreciate that. Example, if given a deadline, this is from LinkedIn user, interesting name. If given a deadline to meet, I work proactively and like to get it done quickly. This can work against me as I could have used the time given to make more progress on. Okay, so I mean, maybe you could use that one. You work proactively, but it's hard for me to imagine that as a weakness. I just can't see it. I can't see it as a weakness, right? You want to be proactive and get things done quickly. I just think it's not. I think if I were interviewing you, I would say, okay, well, okay, great. That's a good strength. Now tell me a weakness. It's okay to have weaknesses. Nobody's perfect. Everyone knows that everyone has weaknesses. And the point is, can you explain your weakness as a path to show that you're working on yourself, that you're making progress, right? That, I think, is the key to that question. And there are different ways to approach it. Marianne says, thank you for the webinar, Luke. My takeaway was a new about sentence for my LinkedIn page. Good luck with the upcoming parenthood. Thank you very much, Marianne. Sincerely appreciated. Great to have you here. Great. Thank you all for joining. I appreciate all of you joining. It's been really fun. Again, we have a lot more of these. Well, we have 4 more of these coming up. So I hope to see you in the future ones. Stephanie says, Omar, there's ways you can improve it. Oh, Stephanie is giving Omar advice here. Don't let that be in the way to achieve what you want. Do you think hiring a tutor would help you? Do you think your communication skills are rusty? Is it business English or general English? All right, so we can recruit Stephanie as our person to give everybody feedback. Thanks, Stephanie. All right, well, thank you all so much. Abdullah Rahman, sorry if I'm saying your name wrong. We're just about to finish up, so sorry. Join next time. Next week, same time, same place. Tell your friends, tell people you know. If you enjoyed today's lesson, great to hear it, Loretta. Glad you found it to be useful. If you enjoyed today's lesson, hit the like and hearts and thumbs up and all of the social things. Do all of that. Tell people you know. Bring them in next week. Say, hey, you might enjoy this. Here's a thing I did. I liked it. I think this is just the beginning. Next week is going to be, I think, even better. And the following week, even better. I think we have a lot of great stuff coming up. Luciana, thank you so much. Let's see. What else? Yes. It was fun. Great. Well, I'm going to enjoy the rest of my tea. I hope you all have a fantastic Thursday. Again, my name is Luke Priddy, and this is our job interview series, our career series on Pearson English. And next week, well, you'll have to stay tuned to see what we're going to talk about. So, see you all next week. Have a good one. Take care, everybody. Thanks again. Stay safe. Have a good weekend, too. Bye-bye. See ya.